Hello dear viewers, I'm Shant Kerbabian and you're watching Cases. Many reports have been issued addressing the condition of Lebanese and Syrian children laborers inside Lebanon after the deteriorating internal economic status and the influx of Syrian refugees into Lebanon. Now, International Convention on Children Labor, specifically Convention number 138 on the minimum age for admission to employment and Convention number 182 on the worst forms of child labor, to which Lebanon is a signatory, deal with child laborers and their rights. What is the situation in Lebanon and how effective and applicable are the laws? For more on the issue, I am joined in the studio by Ms. Fatima Shoukeir, a journalist and a researcher at Al-Akhbar newspaper, yes. And from Beirut by Fakhry, a researcher and human rights activist. Welcome.
Hi.
Now, before we get into our discussion, we have a report about the situation of child laborers, Lebanese child laborers in Lebanon. Let's take a listen.
Lebanon, the country where corruption penetrates almost all aspects of any people's lives, features a new social threat, child labor. Amid the lack of law implementation or even the absence of some fundamental acts, rules, and regulations, Lebanese children are now more prone to employment at a very early age in order to meet the basic living standards. The official number of working children issued by the Lebanese authorities back in 2003 approximated 100,000 children. However, Dr. Hayat Asayran, the national consultant of the International Program on the Elimination of Child Labor under the International Labour Organization, stated that the actual number is around 180,000, warning that the number could be much serious. The term child labor does not actually only revolve around seeing children walking the streets and selling flowers or gum or even begging. There are children whose work is a camouflage and an excuse to other illegal jobs. Accordingly, delivery children might fit this category of invisible children. This type of work is quite ordinary around Beirut through the delivery of shisha and snacks, but it often hides behind it an illegal job, mainly drugs delivery. Prostitution is another form of child labor in Lebanon, and parents often facilitate indirectly this type of work due to the need of money. In this context, Nadine told international human rights organizations that it was due to her family's financial needs she ended up being a prostitute. She clarified that her parents needed money, so they sent her to work as a housemaid at the age of 12. In June 2002, and after pressuring the Lebanese parliament, the latter passed the law 422, allowing children subject to sexual abuse or physical violence to raise lawsuits against their offenders. Nevertheless, how effective are these laws in a conservative society like ours?
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Fatima, thank you for joining me. Thank you for being on Cases. Fatima, the issue of child labor, it's a big issue. It's a huge issue. We are going to, especially in Lebanon, and we are going to tackle it from different perspectives. But I would like to stick in the first perspective. The first idea is about Lebanese children in Lebanon. I mean, there is a misconception in Lebanon that usually children who are working in labor children are refugees, but there is a fact that there are statistics and estimates say that 180,000, that's the minimum number, and even more are Lebanese children working. What do you have to say about that?
First, good evening.
Thank you.
It's worth to mention that the last formal statistics in Lebanon, the last official one was 2003, and it said that 180,000 Lebanese child are working, and they are below the age, the official age. It was 2003, and now we are coming to 2014.
10 years. Don't you find this disturbing?
I can assure that this number has not doubled, not tripled even. It's multiplied by 5 and 6 and 7.
Don't you think there's a problem? Like the latest official statistics in 2003, I mean 10 years, like the government haven't done any statistics, any formal investigation?
Lebanese corruption is in almost every field. It's in the field of labor, it's in the field of statistics, in every field. So children are working, and the authorities are just developing projects from 5 to 6 years just to gain the money.
Okay.
And after 2 or 3 years, the projects are being cancelled.
Okay. Now, going back to Lebanese children working in Lebanon, how can you describe the situation of Lebanese children, laborers?
Recently, I wrote something about I wrote something about children labor in the graveyards and the cemeteries. And I had 2 cases about that. The first case was the Syrian refugees.
We'll discuss that in the second segment.
Second case, which was shocking, it was Lebanese children. There are 2 Lebanese children. They were working in the graveyard since 5 years ago. And they were 5 years and they started working in the graveyard, which is the worst child labor ever. They help in burying, they clean graves, they every kind of, they even recite Quran and aside, and they gain money for reciting Quran.
Okay. Now, Ms. Fatima, I'll just get back to you in a minute, and I'll go now to my guest via Sarah from Beirut, Mr. Ali Fakhry. Mr. Ali, thank you for joining us on the show.
Thank you, Shant.
Ali, as we said, the statistics are scary. 180,000 children minimum, and the last statistics was in 2003. 10 years gap between the latest statistics. Now, what do you think of this? Especially the statistics and these numbers of Lebanese children. These are not refugees, these are Lebanese children.
Speaking of the statistics, as my colleague said, Fatima, that the last statistics has been in 2003, and this is totally normal in Lebanon, not having statistics and accurate number, but this is not the problem. The main problem and the main issue is that we cannot be very utopic and speak about ending child labor with having such a bad economy in Lebanon, which you have to categorize the word of child labor. When you speak about child labor, you have to speak about childs coming from inside of Lebanon, from the south and from the north and from the west and from the rural areas, because their parents do not have money. They have migrated to the city to find some work and some business, and they are obliged to work, and sometimes they are the only people who are gaining money and giving it to their family. The second category of child labor, all the childs who are coming effectively from Syria, and they come to work in agriculture in Bekaa, or they come to work in Beirut in different jobs.
Ali, we'll talk about the Syrian children in the second segment, but I would like to focus on Lebanese children at this point.
And the third category, we cannot only speak about child labor in Lebanon, because you do not have any statistics that give you any accurate number only about child labor, or Lebanese or non-Lebanese child labor. But let's stick to Lebanese. We cannot be very utopic and saying that yes, we want to end child labor in Lebanon. Rather, we have to speak about putting some regulation about childs working and protecting them from the Ministry of Labor. They're giving a mandate to the Ministry of Labor to do some researches and to do some work to protect them, and the Ministry of Interior to be able to look after those children and listen to their complaint. There is a huge and significant number of children working, but we can understand this. Yeah. Unfortunately, you have a very bad economy, and we do not have any welfare system, and we do not have the government of Lebanon supporting those families. If someone sends his children to work at the age of 10 because they do not have bread in house, so I cannot tell their parents just let them stay at home just because the UN have sent an international regulation or the national law to say that yes, they cannot work, so you have to starve to death.
But Ali, what are the efforts done by the government in this regard? I mean, are you saying
there is zero effort done by the government. There is zero effort done by the government. The latest project by the UN had to oblige the Lebanese government of pushing into a law into the Lebanese parliament to put some regulations on child labor. So effectively, there is no effort by the government. The government cannot afford to clean the roads in Lebanon. We are asking them now about working on child labor, and this is unfortunate. And I give you an example.
This is something bigger than the government?
I give you an example. No, it is in the first place the problem of the government, and the government have to help the Lebanese people economically to be able to sustain themselves throughout the year. And when they help them economically and they help the economy of the country and of its citizens, they will not be obliged again to send their children to work. I give you an example. In the 70s in Iraq, the UN and the UNESCO, actually the UNICEF has flattered the Iraq with its regards of its program to end child labor, because they had an obligatory law to send all the children to school, and they have supported the families who send all the children to school. But when the economical siege have put on Iraq, okay, a few years after this, you have saw an influx. You have saw a big number of children starting to work to sustain their families, because the families did not have enough money to support themselves, so they had to send the children to work.
Okay.
So,
Ms. Ali, I would like to ask you to stay here for a minute. Ms. Fatima, you see, as your colleague Ali is saying, that the government is unable to respond with any actions.
Yes.
Now, let's put that on hold for a minute, and let's talk about the effects. The effects of labor. What could child labor have an effect on children?
If you please, I want here to mention a life experience with the Lebanese authorities concerning child labor. While writing my article about child labor and working in the graveyards, I called the Lebanese authorities. I called Prime Minister in the Parliament. I called Labor Ministry, and I called Social Affairs Ministry.
How was the response?
The response was the same. All the Lebanese authorities rapid and go quickly to lay the blame on each other's feet. يعني
Nobody is taking responsibility of this.
The Social Affairs Ministry says that the Labor Ministry is responsible, and we are not responsible for that. The bureaucratic system, the terrible bureaucratic system in Lebanon leads these children to stay, leads these families to leave their children without responsibility.
How can we change this? I mean, you're saying the government is unable to change anything. So do you think NGOs are effective in this regard?
I don't trust Lebanese authorities to do this mission, because as Ali said, they are working with zero effort. So I prefer that. I see that NGOs are, Save Lebanon, for example, the UNICEF, some personal initiatives are taking place
to help. And I would revert the same question to our guest Ali, because Ali is active with children, with NGOs. Ali, what are NGOs doing in this regard? How effective are NGOs, since the government is unable to work and since the government is unable to react in any way? What are NGOs doing in this regard?
Before starting this, I want to comment on my colleague's point of view. Once, from personal experience, once I was visiting Rumi's prison with a European donor to see the situation of the juveniles section in Rumi prison, and which is very funny and sad in the same time, that we have seen children at the age of 8 and at the age of 10 have been locked in the same cell with children at the age of 16 and 17. With people at 60, and when we ask them what are those children are doing here, and you can put them in the kindergarten instead of putting them here.
And let's not forget the bullying, and let's not forget the
bullying, the sexual abuse, the bad influence, all of this in the prison. And they told us these are children who were working and begging in the streets, so we took them from the city and we put them in the jail. And instead of sending them to some place, to a school, they put them in jail. And we are asking the Lebanese government at this stage to help to end child labor. They are unable to know the difference between a criminal and a child labor, and they put
Ali,
them.
Which goes back to my question, which is
NGOs.
Since the government is not able to do this, the job. Yeah.
Shant, you have to know something. I am an activist, and I've been active with several lots of NGOs, but we cannot rely on NGOs to solve the problem of a country or of a government. And this is the biggest problem in Lebanon. Since you have hundreds and thousands of NGOs doing the job of the government, so the government is not doing their job. They said the NGO will do it.
So
and this
do
is
you
totally
suggest
wrong.
that the NGO should stop working?
No, I do not suggest. I suggest that the donors of these NGOs has to set a clearer agenda on what they want and what they do not want. The NGOs are not here to do the job of the government. The first responsible of this is the government. A second responsible of this is the NGO. If the NGO could solve the problem, then give them the ministry and rule the country. But in regard to your question, NGOs have been trying to work and solve this problem. You have Save the Children who are working out on this. You have lots of NGOs. You have the UNICEF also working on this, Auxilia working on this, but lots of effort are being made, and lots of effort will be made. Okay, but the first responsible
But the government,
of
you think
this
that
is
the government has to
and
step
the
in?
NGOs has to come second in solving this problem,
Assisting and supporting.
Assisting and supporting, because as my colleague said, they will have a funding to work on 5 years. After the funding is done and the program 5 years is over, they will let them go, and another NGO will come and start over from scratch to work. So this is it will never ever be the solution for the problem.
Of course. Mr. Ali and Ms. Fatima, we'll stop here. We'll take a short break and we'll be right back. After the break, we'll talk about the situation of Syrian and Palestinian refugee children and their situation in Lebanon. Stay tuned. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We're talking about the child labor in Lebanon, and now we're going to the second segment of our show, which is about the refugee children and their situation in Lebanon. But before we talk about this with our guests, we have a report summing up the situation of refugees in Lebanon. Let's check it out.
Children to Palestinian and Syrian children, where the influx of Syrian refugees reached a dangerous level, accompanied by devastating living standards. According to Lebanese officials, the number of Syrian refugees is estimated to be around 1 million. The number decreased to 835,921 registered and unregistered refugees, according to the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. In this regard, out of 835,921, the UNHCR approximates 408,510, or nearly 50% Syrian children under the age of 18 affected by the crisis, where the majority faces problems accessing education. Save Children's organization in Lebanon said that the language is the biggest problem for Syrian refugees. In Syria, the school system is entirely run in Arabic, while in Lebanon, schools teach scientific materials in either French or in English, which few Syrian refugees are able to understand. In light of the deteriorating situation of Syrian families, children are obliged to work to assist providers with some basic needs. Maria Khalifis, the UNICEF Regional Director for the Middle East and North Africa, made the remarks about the Syrian children and got published by Reuters on September 2013. To Khalifis, families are poor and destitute after 2.5 years of war. Often, in order to continue living here, they have a lot of expenses they need to pay, and the result is kids have to work. Today, as the flow of Syrian refugees into Lebanon continues and the economic situation in the country declines, the number of child laborers seem to increase amid the absence of laws and lack of governmental surveillance and control.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Ms. Fatima, like we talked about Lebanese children and their situation, but we have to consider now the status of being a refugee. I mean, the psychological damage that this has on children, and plus being a laborer, being working child. What could this have, and what kind of an effect could this have on a child?
First of all, here we have to differentiate between, we have to categorize. Mm-hmm. Working as selling flowers is different, totally different than selling drugs, for example. Mm-hmm. And
there have been reports about children working, like selling different things, and at the same time being exploited and being used, like with distributing drugs.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So it's totally different. Selling flowers, it's child labor. Yes, it's prohibited. However, the cases are happening now they are terrible. Mm-hmm. And we're having, let's say, we have to talk about a specific case, for example. Mm-hmm. It's working in the graveyard.
Yeah, the case you mentioned about the Syrian
case
children.
I wrote about. I saw Syrian refugees, Syrian children working in the graveyard. They were talking like no potential. Mm-hmm. Their potential was zero. They were playing football within the graveyards, mm-hmm. which is for their childhood and for their potential, for their ambitions and everything like that, it's dead. Mm-hmm. So child labor, in its simple cases, it's destroyable for children. Mm-hmm. How is it the case when we are talking about the abuse they are exposed to? Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, children it's difficult for them to live the situation. I mean, as an adult, you live a war and then be a refugee and you can manage, but children, and they have to work. And the case of invisible children, for example, the children who sell drugs and yes. the children who are exploited in this way. Plus you have the sexual harassment, and plus you have the exploitation. I mean, they're not paid well. Yes. And besides, one thing, the education. There's an important factor here. These children are denied education. Okay,
let us make it clear. Mm-hmm. Children's personality is like a mud. Mm-hmm. It's easily modified. Okay. So displacements and wars, the effects of displacements and wars on children is 100. It's 100 effects on the adults. Mm-hmm. So being paid, no matter how it's a few or it's enough, mm-hmm. being paid for the children makes him satisfied and makes him he feels like I'm responsible and I need no education and I need no it makes him stronger in a misery, mm-hmm. in a bad way.
But this will have a psychological damage later on in the future, and the problem with this current crisis.
The potential of this children will be dead. He'll not be able to be subjected to any kind of rules later on. Mm-hmm. He's being prepared to be a criminal later on.
Ms. Fatima, I'm going to ask you a question. It might be a bit strange, but what about the rights of children? What about the UNICEF what about all those? Like, where do they come in this situation?
Let us be realistic. Mm-hmm. Ali said we shouldn't have to be utopic. Mm-hmm. UNICEF and even Lebanese authorities, Syrian authorities, all kinds of authorities are not focusing on their topics and on their issues.
And they're not focusing on the children. These are the most, these are the people who are damaged the most.
Children are lost in this mess. They are lost in the mess of authorities, in the mess of NGOs, in the mess of their parents, and they are the only victim.
Allow me now to go to my guest, Mr. Ali. Ali, the number of refugees are horrific, and what's more frightening is half of these numbers are children. Now, what does this number say, and what is the government doing about those children? I'm talking about refugee children. Like we know the Lebanese government doesn't have any refugee camps in Lebanon, refused to have refugee camps. Where do these children go? What do these children do?
First of all, denying, we have also to categorize this problem. We had child labor coming from Syria way before the Syrian revolution started, and we have them working in Bekaa and the agriculture and in some areas in the south. So this is the factor of having the children from Syria working in Lebanon.
This is not new, but the influx.
This is not new.
But
the influx. Now we're speaking about the influx, and here we have also to categorize this the subject that putting those children working in agriculture and in different works, it has to be we have to have regulations that protect them, that set working hours, that sees their rights in working and in safety, etc., and getting paid and good wages, and being protected and being subjected to also education. Now, the other category, which is the biggest category that we are seeing now and reports are speaking about, are the mafias or the gangs who are buying those children or taking advantage of these children to sell drugs, to smuggle weapons sometimes, to go work as beggars, because this is one of the biggest economies of the mafia. They gather 10 or 20 or 25 children, and they take them to any street and they tell them, "Yalla, start begging some money. I will give you 10% of the money, and I will have the rest." And they oblige them and they sexually abuse them.
And plus the prostitution. Let's not forget prostitution as well.
Yes, you have prostitution for female and male children are subjected to prostitution, and we have read lots of reports about it. Now, the other part of it is denying the access of education for those children. And if you have refugees who are registered to the UNHCR and people who are having the parents are working and having some support from the UNHCR to have some food, but the children are denied from going to Lebanese schools because the Lebanese system is not set to welcome those children in the education system.
Ali, so excuse me, as we mentioned in the report, there was one good example in Tripoli where a school in Tripoli adapted Libyan school curriculums and Libyan school systems. So, and Syrian children adapted to that quickly. Don't you think this could be one example, and the Lebanese government could implement this example? You
have many non-governmental organizations, international governmental organizations that are now working on the schools to let them adapt the Syrian curriculum and to put those kids in the school so they do not have the time to go on the streets and to have all this being subjected to all of this problem. And you have one significant problem also, which is a danger after in those camps where you have some political influence that some people are putting on these children. You have seen in Africa the children warriors who has taken weapons to go and fight on the behalf of the grown-ups.
The same thing was happening in Syria as well.
Exactly. Now it's happening in Syria, and now these kids are being also subjected to brainwash to go and do the same thing. But as I said, the problem is very wide and it's very big. We cannot put them in the same category. In order to solve the problem, we have to know who are we tackling and why we are tackling. If we are tackling the mafias who are taking advantage of these children, this is the responsibility of the Ministry of Interior to go and arrest them and to take those children to schools and look after them. If we are speaking about the children who are working in agriculture, this is or industrial field, this is the responsibility of Ministry of Labor to go
to the government. We go back to the government's inability.
Yes, and if it's the problem of the children who are not going to school and having lots of time to go on the streets, this is the responsibility of Ministry of Education. And as my colleague Fatima said, the Lebanese bureaucracy is killer. يعني, if you go and tell, you have, this is like any other problem in Lebanon. Any problem in Lebanon. If you go and ask a government, you say to, this is your responsibility. They say, no, it's not our responsibility. This is the responsibility of other ministries.
So it's the bureaucracy, and this is what Fatima was talking about
exactly.
earlier.
So if we want to speak, if we don't want to be very negative, we want to speak about us as Lebanese citizens and as people aware, as human rights activists and people aware citizen to solve this problem. If we see that there is a problem and we can solve it in front of our leg by supporting a kid, sending it to school, by supporting a kid, giving them some job but not very hard job, by reporting abuses, by refusing of paying money for example, for beggars, because you know that those beggars on their intersections are being exploited by them. Yeah, and you have lots of responsibility as a citizen to do it in order to solve the problem. And the second and the most important, as Lebanese citizens, we have to be organized to push the Lebanese government and oblige the Lebanese government to take.
This is what I will talk about later on, Ali, about the lobbying, about how Lebanese people can change the situation. Exactly. Now, Fatima, we were talking about registered children and registered refugees, but let's not forget there is maybe double, even the triple, the number that are not registered. These are not registered refugees. These people are more threatened. They are more exploited in any way. What do you say? What do you have to say about this situation?
First of all, I have to say that the problem is controversial. That is, when NGOs are working, when NGOs are putting schools into consideration, schools that manage the Syrian curriculum, the parents won't accept. The parents of the Syrian students or the Syrian kids won't accept their children to go to schools because they are the only developers and the only supporters of the family. So the problem is controversial here. Talking about the registered number of refugees, I can assure that the registered number of refugees is only 1/3
of the actual number existing on Lebanese soil,
which facilitates the abusing, which facilitates putting these families and these refugees under the attack of the...
And actually regulating this situation, registering these people, even like if the Lebanese government could step in and be effective, it could not only help the Lebanese, it could not only help refugee children, also the status of economy. I mean, these children that are not registered and they are working on Lebanese soil, they are affecting the economy negatively.
We have to link here between the first section of the episode and the second section. As we are having Syrian and Palestinian refugees working, we are also having Lebanese child labor, which means that child labor is not only a Syrian or a Palestinian or refugees
problem.
Not.
This is a misconception.
It's an innate problem in Lebanon. And the Lebanese authorities, which is directly responsible for its Lebanese citizens, is not working. So I'm not optimistic that the Lebanese authorities would work on the Syrian refugees issues or the Palestinian refugees.
We'll talk about this. We'll talk about the future situation, and we'll talk about some UNICEF statistics later on after the break. Staying tuned.
Women's rights redefined.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Again, we're talking about the issue of child labor in Lebanon. We talked about the Lebanese children, refugee children, and now we have some statistics by the UNICEF. The first one is the following: 400,000 children are registered as refugees, and only a quarter is enrolled in public schools. Now, Ms. Fatima, let's take this first statistics. 400,000 children are registered, and these people are not registered in public schools. Now, what could be done to push these children into public schools? How can we affect them? Like, should there be activism towards the parents so they can push their children to schools? How can we fix this? How can we partially fix this, at least?
The solution and the problem as well is controversial. International conventions and international laws are just a matter of papers and signatures among all international policies and all international regimes. So the problem is very wide, as Ali said, and the solutions are as well should be very deep. The solutions should start from the parents themselves, should start first from the economy. Managing the economy would automatically reflects on child labor, on children, on
the whole population,
on women, human rights, on every social files that are sticking. So it's about parents, it's about authorities, it's about economy, it's about even fixing the work of the NGOs and making their agendas clear and even making their funding clear.
Exactly, because NGOs now are stacked up and are swamped with different work. I mean, some NGOs are doing work that they're not supposed to do, but they're there and they have to do it.
Yes. I want to say something here, that even some regimes have the benefit of having such children.
What do you mean? In what regard?
And for example, the funding of the NGOs throughout the world, worldwide, there are two kinds of funding, or two kinds of. Do you believe some parts are using this, are actually benefiting from? It's also abused. The NGOs are being abused. We should make this clear. As the children are being abused, also NGOs are being abused.
Okay, now
we cannot rely on NGOs and we cannot rely on authorities. It's deeper than that.
Okay, Sali, what do you think about this idea that we were talking about, and NGOs being exploited, NGOs being also drained because of this problem, because some NGOs are doing the work they're not supposed to do because of these numbers? What can we say about this?
So earlier you mentioned a statistic about enrolling children in public schools. Let's redefine the word public schools in Lebanon. Lebanese children are not being able to have access to public schools because they do not have enough places, and the schooling system in Lebanon, which is, they say that it's a free schooling system at public school. It's not a free system. They have to pay money to be at these public schools, and sometimes people do not have it and they don't send their children even to public schools. So what are we asking here? We are asking refugees from Syria we are not speaking about refugees from Palestine. This is another issue, and it has nothing. Yes, it has nothing to do with our case today. But children from Syria, we ask them to go to be enrolled in public Lebanese schools, which the Lebanese public school, they do not have enough tables and educational system and people responsible to educate Lebanese children. And international organizations and international donors are now supporting the Lebanese schools. They are paying them money to accept people to go. I give you an example of something happening in Al-Akhbar. The international organizations are giving the money to the responsibles of public schools and paying them double salary to accept those children to be admitted into schools.
Okay.
This is one. And speaking about non-governmental organizations that are doing the job that they do not have to do, we are speaking about non-governmental. Let's define non-governmental organizations, which means a normal citizen, the average Joe citizen who is working on solving a problem. I do not believe that this is a humanitarian problem. This is the responsibility of everyone.
Okay, don't you think the example that we talked about earlier, Ali, about school in Akkar implying Libyan school curriculum, as we talked about earlier, could be implied, and could other schools take example of this and apply it?
This is very beautiful what you are saying, and I love it. Okay, but as I said, let's have in education.
What should be done? How can someone? Can a school principal implement this by himself?
Yeah, they can. They can if they take. But again, we are speaking about bureaucracy. To go and have a training as non-governmental organization in public school in Lebanon, you have to pass by the Minister of Education to be allowed to have access to 2 classes to teach them about civil responsibility.
So
now
we go back to the problem of bureaucracy.
But I don't want to seem to sound very, very negative tonight about everything, and there is a problem.
You are. So far you are.
Unfortunately, this is
the reality. I understand. I understand.
But finding a solution will be as simple as it is taking those children to schools to educate them and finding a good curriculum to admit them, because let's face it, the problem, the war in Syria, or let's say the revolution in Syria, or whatever what we say, will not end in a year or 2.
And this is what we'll talk about.
And this is a long-term situation that it's happening, and we, the Lebanese government, has to know, and the international donors. Let's put the Lebanese government on the side. The international donors, the UN the UNHCR, the UNICEF has to know that this problem won't be solved in a day or 2. So
this is what we'll talk about. This is what we'll talk about in a minute. Let's go to the second bullet point. The second thing, which is, according to the UNICEF, the number of Syrian refugees will rise to 1.3 million by January 2014 and to 1.6 million by the end of 2014. This is what we were talking about, and this is scary. And 1.6 by the end of 2014. What is the Lebanese government doing? Not just the Lebanese government. What can be done to prepare for these numbers?
The Lebanese community is draining due to this. It's already, the Lebanese community is already weak. You know, we have a weak economy. We have everything in Lebanon is weak, and even the authorities' responsibility are being. You know, we have the parliament is not working. The ministries are not working. Nothing in Lebanon is working. So 1.6 million refugees
by the end of 2014.
Yes, by the end of 2014 will be a heavy load, a heavy load on the Lebanese, on the Syrian themselves, on the Lebanese authorities, on the international community as well.
And do you think the international? Do you think they will reach a point where people are bored of this problem? Not bored, but it will become history, because we've seen this happening with the Palestinian cause. It is, and unfortunately, some governments, some NGOs are unfortunately have forgotten about this cause. So people keep trying to.
The Syrian case is different than the Palestinian case. I cannot tell what would happen. It may have this number would be a pressure on the Lebanese, on the international community, or else maybe it will be a negative pressure. يعني they will be bored from sending money, or even they will be bored from the abuse of money being sent to Lebanon.
Okay, now Ali, I'll hit this point to you now. I know you're excited about this. The preparations, 1.6 million by the end of 2014. As we're talking, the government is drained. The NGOs will be drained at this point. I don't know how many people will be affected and will be passionate about donating to this cause by this time. How do you think we should react about this future? As you said, the Syrian crisis is not ending anytime soon.
Let's say first of all, 1.6 million Syrian citizens being in Lebanon, ya ahla wa sahla. I am very happy. They are most welcome in my country, like I was the most welcome in their country in the war of 2006, and they supported us. So this is not scary at all. But there's responsibilities that need to be set for the public institutions working in Lebanon on solving this problem. Let's say that the international community are not fully fulfilling their promises to the Lebanese. Also, this is not all the problem of the Lebanese public institution. The UN has promised Lebanon some money to accommodate.
But Ali, there's a problem of funding in the UN. There's a huge deficit.
Exactly, but this is a political problem. I don't want to get into this. I don't want to get
it's a
into
totally
the political
dilemma
of why the UN are not supporting the Lebanese government to solve the problem of refugees, etc., etc.
This is a whole different case. It's a whole different
case. But let's say 1.6 million. It's a significant number of citizens who are coming to Lebanon. I don't want. I do not accept to say that this will pose a problem on the social level, because Syrian and Lebanese are one people, one nation.
We're not talking about social
countries.
problems, Ali. We're talking about how this could affect the children and economy at the same time.
It will affect. De facto, it will affect. We are in Lebanon. We're not living in Paris or Switzerland. We have been into a constant war from 35 years ago until now.
Ali, a problem like this would even affect France and Switzerland. This is a huge, humanitarian catastrophe going on.
This is why I said I don't want to enter in the political dilemma and the political speech about this. But let's say that, as simple as that, the UN has promised Lebanon a certain amount of money to support those children to go to school and support those things to be accommodated and support their families so they won't be obliged to send their children to work or being exploited. So we need from the UN as the first place to give this money, and at the second place, in the second stage, we will go as citizens and ask the Lebanese government, Ya Habibi, you have $1 billion. What are you doing with $1 billion? Support those children.
Okay, Ali, excuse me, I have to interrupt you here. We have to take the last bullet point, the last point by the UNICEF, which is Syrian child laborers are often earning as little as $2.50 to $5 a day. Fatima, this is exploitation. This is as clear as it can get, exploitation. Let's not talk about the Lebanese government. We talked a lot negatively about the government, but let's talk about the people. Let's talk about how can pressure be, how can people pressure and how can people lobby and change the situation. Let's talk about the future a bit.
These salaries comparing to the Lebanese prices are terrible.
Of course.
Buying bread in Lebanon is a dream for a Syrian refugee. So it's a matter. We'll keep aside the Lebanese authorities because they are aside. Let's talk about it's a matter of humans.
Exactly.
It's a matter of self-responsible. So the abusement is working. The shops are even increasing the prices. Schools are increasing the fees. Bread is it's in risk.
And let's talk about the point, which is we're talking about children here. You're talking about children who need their certain kind of nutrition, who need their recreational activities. It's not only
Let us not forget that these children are the only developers and the only supporters for their families. So talking about children. He's not interested in playing anymore. He's interested how he could get bread, how he could get medicine for his family. So their ambitions is not how going to the fun fair or buying
it's
new
about
clothes.
Making enough money to not be beaten by the gang leader.
We are talking about physically they are children. However, mentally they are not children anymore. Mentally and psychologically, they are not children anymore.
Okay, Ali, I'm going to hand you another question that you're going to love, I assume. What about shelters in Lebanon? What about shelters? How can we include these children in shelters? And we can, like the Lebanese government has to have some certain responsibility here, I understand. But could be this done by locals? Like if they can arrange certain shelters for these children to contain them?
Yes, and this is happening, but let's also go back one step behind of what you said, $2.55 a day for a child. This is almost what 30% of the Lebanese people are earning per day also. This is not new, not an alien for the Lebanese, one. Two, the prices are increasing and it's becoming a hell for everyone living on the Lebanese territories, being European or Lebanese, or being Syrian. So of all, the initiative held by Lebanese activists or normal citizens are remarkable and amazing, and you are seeing people from different backgrounds, political backgrounds, religious backgrounds, not caring about if these people are supporting Bashar al-Assad or supporting the opposition in Syria. But
this doesn't matter. It's more
it doesn't matter. It's a humanitarian.
Now.
So what they are doing now, they are gathering money, they are gathering food, they are trying to find shelters, they are trying to do some educational programs, etc.
Ali, well, short of time, so I'm gonna have to end this with you, Miss Fatima. One last word. What can you say, one last word about the situation of refugee children and Lebanese children, labor children in Lebanon?
Child labor, I won't talk about Syrian or Lebanese child labor. The whole region is passing through a messy condition. So the prices are high for Lebanese and Syrian as well. So what we have to talk about is the responsibility, the self-responsibility, the official responsibility, and as well the responsibility of the NGOs.
It goes to the responsibility. Thank you very much, Ms. Fatima, for joining us. And also, Ms. Ali, thank you very much for joining us on the show. Ladies and gentlemen, this was the cases, and we talked about child labor. Children are the most vulnerable. They are the most affected by this war. Thank you very much for watching us. Tune in next week. Bye-bye.